We will now be starting for the first session of the day. So with a status check of the Equal Hue project. The Equal Hue project is a joint collaboration of Snehal Pradhan, Karunya Keshav, and the Sports Law and Policy Center. It aims to chart the way forward for women's cricket in India, and the project began last year based on a report titled Equal Hue. I will now welcome Shan Kohli, Senior Associate at LawNK, and Kruthika NS, Associate at LawNK, and both researchers at the Sports Law and Policy Center, to give us a status check of the progress of the Equal Hue project. Now over to Shan and Kruthika.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first session of the SLPC Symposium. We are delighted that each of you could make it and join us here today. My name is Shan Kohli, and I, along with Kruthika, will take you through the inception of the Equal Hue project, which is now 1 year old, and where we stand 1 year on from our launch at last year's SLPC Symposium. So just to give you a brief background, apart from the video and the brief background that Yogita already gave you, the Equal Hue project was launched based on a report released last year, which was titled An Equal Hue, the Way Forward for the Women in Blue. The report was authored by Snehal Pradhan, Karunya Keshav, and it was commissioned by the SLPC. The vision of the Equal Hue project really is to enable young girls and women to have equal opportunities to explore and achieve their highest potential at the elite level in cricket. The Equal Hue project aims to bring to the forefront the issues affecting women's cricket in India. The project aims to initiate dialogue and discussions with key stakeholders to implement practical changes which can actually be implemented on ground and which can have a direct impact on the lives of these girls and women who play sport. And like we mentioned, the Equal Hue project was launched 1 year ago at last year's symposium in June 2020. The purpose behind that report and this project was really to analyze the current situation relating to women's cricket in India, identify certain areas which need work, and offer suggestions on improving excellence in Indian women's cricket. The report was mainly directed towards stakeholders in women's cricket in India, which includes the players themselves, state associations, the BCCI, clubs and league franchises, broadcasters, and sponsors. A copy of the Equal Hue report is available on the Equal Hue website, which I will now be taking you to. Yeah, Kruthika is now going to just take us through the major recommendations of the report.
Just to quickly take you through the recommendations of the report, as Shan mentioned, you will have access to the entire 100-page report on the website. The primary recommendations of the report were mainly on how to remove the barriers for participation, how to improve elite performance, how we can bridge the gap between domestic and international cricket, how to develop grassroots pathways, setting up a women's IPL, prioritizing player welfare, and how to make the sport financially viable for players. After the launch of the report, we circulated it amongst stakeholders in cricket for feedback and engaged in discussions on how to take the report forward. The stakeholders we engaged with in this period included former and current players, the BCCI fraternity, Indian and international journalists, and finally, stakeholders representing academies and the coaching fraternity. I now hand over to Shan, who will take you through the social media campaign and the launch of the website.
Thanks, Kruthika. So, like she mentioned, post this feedback gathering exercise in November 2020, to coincide with the Women's T20 Challenge, we launched the hashtag Equal Hue social media campaign on the SLPC's Twitter handle. During this 2-week campaign, we ran a contest. We started a video campaign for parents to share videos of young girls playing cricket. We shared interesting stories of elite women cricketers. We shared videos and facts about the growth and development of women's cricket. We also ran polls on the most pressing issues affecting women's cricket in India. And we launched the Equal Hue website, which you're looking at today. We also launched a special section on the SLPC Highlights newsletter, which was dedicated to the Equal Hue project. And in this section, we would share the most relevant and insightful articles on women's cricket and women's sport with our readers. During this time, we also released a wish list, which you can now see on your screen, on the 10 reforms and the 10 things that we would like to see change for women's cricket in 2021. So I'll just hand over to Kruthika now to take you through some of them and to take you through the next set of activities that we had for the year.
Thanks so much, Shan. So as you can see, there are 10 reforms on our wish list, and you can see that they are pretty aspirational in nature, and this is how we want the Equal Hue project to be. We want it to be to the best of women's capabilities in India, and this is what we're seeking to attain over the next 5 to 10 years. Now, during the first leg of the project, some of the key issues that we did delve into a bit more deeply was the barriers to participation, perception, and funding of women's sport. To take you through our journey, during the first week of January this year, as part of the second phase of the Equal Hue project, we kicked off the first of our series of closed-door discussions with stakeholders on the challenges and possible solutions to the key issues affecting women's cricket. The Consultative Series will culminate eventually in a concise charter of reforms that takes into consideration all the data, opinions, and suggestions that we have gathered, and will aim to lay out a clear roadmap for reform. The Consultative Series was conducted closed door, and none of the names of the participants will be divulged to respect their privacy. The participants in the first session, that's on barriers to participation, included current and former cricketers, their families, coaches, and sports journalists. The current session that you can see on screen consisted 9 participants. Since these are intended to be closed door, the names of the participants have been withheld, and the views expressed will not be attributed to any one particular individual. This brings us to the question as to why was this closed door? Now, we understand that most of the research that we have on gender inequality in sport is primarily from the global north. And we've often found that such research tends to homogenize women as one mass or one homogeneous group. So this is something that did not really sit well with us when we started the Equal Hue project. And we found that in a country like India itself, women come from varieties of intersecting class, caste, and other marginalized backgrounds. And hence, we thought that we need to delve a bit deeper into why these specific barriers somehow culminate into varying inequalities. So the reason of choosing a closed door discussion was to provide a safe space for people of all these identities and all these backgrounds to bring up issues that particularly get pushed under the carpet in regular conversation. We also foresaw the possibility of certain sensitive topics such as sexual violence arising in these conversations, and we wanted to provide a safe space in that respect as well. Finally, we realized that a closed-door discussion offers a chance to delve deeper and understand nuanced issues from lived experiences, and this contributed to the qualitative nature of our research. Now we will take you through the barriers to participation discussion, and just to quickly give you some of the insights from this consultative series. This report captures the main points of conversation and points and possible ways forward in which we can increase women's participation in sport rather than have the same structural barriers that hinder their participation. Now, the key heads in which we sort of placed these barriers were mainly social, infrastructural and safety, health, and financial barriers. Now, just to quickly take you through each of these subsections, we found that under social barriers, there had to be a particular set of questions that we had to pose to the participants. And these were primarily like, why are there certain social barriers prevalent in India? What are these social norms that prevent a career in sport, which even cause girls who pick up sport to actually drop out eventually? Is there a reason that families and parents dislike the prospect of girls training under male coaches or playing with male students? And is there any support for parents and families of girls who take up cricket as a career despite all the odds? Now, moving on to the infrastructural barriers. We mainly have entry barriers in India and most of the global south that is not necessarily always discussed in regular conversation. And something as simple as do girls have changing rooms, and do they have bathrooms in academies that they can use while playing tournaments? How can a girl and an academy convince parents that they can provide a safe space? And because of all these reasons, where you see that the infrastructure is a reflection of the fact that girls are not taken as serious or competitive individuals, is there even a possibility of viewing sport as merely recreational rather than actually, considering it as a pathway for future professional goals for women? So the other issue that is a sort of culmination of the infrastructure and the social barriers is the issue of sexual harassment. Now, when we talk about sexual harassment, we usually view it as having a posh committee or having certain guidelines laid down in an academy or in a school where the girl is studying or playing. But what we found through our conversations is that the larger societal infrastructure or the larger the cityscape or the infrastructure around the academy also contributes to how safe women feel. So this mainly brought out the conclusion that when we talk about safety, we cannot limit it merely to spaces where sport is played. So for instance, just to give an example, one of the cricketers even mentioned that as a young teenager, she had to shield her parents from stories of sexual harassment because she didn't want them to be worried. So when she was traveling in a bus or even in a group of, the entire team was traveling as a contingent, there was a lot of violence that was prevalent. So, and there was nothing really done to stop it. And as young children, it's not really their prerogative to take up the matter. So it's important that we start viewing it as a societal issue rather than placing it in a certain entity or in a certain individual. Now, because of all these factors, a lot of issues just culminate in the fact that there cannot be further pathways unless all of these issues are taken seriously. So in the end, what happens is the girls who do eventually end up playing sport see that there isn't really too many, there aren't really too many seats at the table at the professional level. So this really begs the question as to what happens to those girls who don't really get selected for the professional tournaments. Is it necessary that you are awarded or rather rewarded for being quote unquote professional only after a certain stage, when you start getting avenues funding, when you start getting better infrastructure? So is there a reason that so many women just drop out before they even reach those levels? So the conversation finally ended up becoming as to why professional sport is even considered as the aspirational goal of these girls, and why we can't only look at the value of play in itself, because some of the participants suggested that the value of play in the sporting system in India is just completely absent. So everyone looks at it as you are either a professional and you either work towards being a professional or you don't. And this is something that we have to change, where inherently looking at play as something that is positive can bring out a positive change in society. But on the other hand, there were also participants who suggested that in a country like India, there is not really that much of a value in play itself or leisure, because the matter of the fact remains is that livelihoods is as important, and Indian families don't really pay attention to leisure, recreation beyond a certain age. So it's very important to consider these factors. So this brings us to the financial barriers. Now, the key questions we sought to answer in this, and we want to reiterate that this financial barrier was an entire other conversation in itself, and you can find that discussion as well on our website. So the main questions really quickly is that how big a role do economic barriers play in dissuading girls from playing cricket, and more importantly, dissuading parents from allowing girls to play cricket? And if there are any sources of funding or scholarships or any other scholarships available not only to girls, but also to coaches to allow them to set up academies. So all of these are mainly just pulling us towards the question as to, do we even really have a pathway, a clear-cut method in which we can get women's sport going by turning on all the cogs of this wheel? So you'll hear a lot of these answers in some of our later sessions in the symposium. So we truly hope that you stick around when Karanya Keshav actually helps us answer these questions. So finally, the end of the discussion really resulted in this, right? We can't really have any positive change unless you have the talent coming in. And if you have barriers to talent, then we can't really even imagine of a generational change. So we really need to consider the fact that these are conversations that we need to start having at a societal level. We need to start having at, we need to have it within like the younger generation as well as with parents. Like, why is this not working? Finally, just to end, I'd just like to quickly address why we chose a graphic recording as the means of providing our, presenting our findings. And the first and main aim was to reach a younger audience, because a program of this nature demands generational change, and society begins to, even subconsciously start entrenching gender norms in kids at a very young age. So it was important to include these teenagers and include young adults who are able to critically examine these norms immediately after they're being fed them, and have them included in our conversation. And secondly, we really wanted accessibility to be one of the key pillars of the Equal Hue project, because we often see that research projects or campaigns of this nature end up becoming incredibly academic and sort of start excluding people who might have to have a seat at the table. And that's something we wanted to do away with. And we actually were, it was a very heartwarming gesture to see that a cricketing academy called Anantapur Academy actually wanted us to use these graphic recordings to drive discussion in their hostels and in their academies about pay parity, about barriers, about gender norms. And I think that was one of the greatest takeaways of personally for us. So I now hand it over to Shan, who will take you through how you can support us.
Thanks, Kruthika. So if you have a look at our Equal Hue website, and it's equalhue.in, there is this page that we have on how to support us. So you can spread the word about the Equal Hue project, give us your feedback, or even if you just want to receive information about the latest activities of the Equal Hue project, you can fill in your details here and see how you can be part of the change. And we also encourage you to just have a go at the Equal Hue website, have a look around, and just learn more about the issues affecting women's cricket that you may be interested in, and you can always drop us a line. So thank you. And that's all from Kruthika and me.
Thanks, Shan and Kruthika, for the status check of the Equal Hue project. We're all looking forward to the continued success of the project and hope the symposium contributes to the project's goal of improving excellence in Indian women's cricket.